A new adventure starts with the growling of several goblins, as they raid and massacre the whole village inhabited by humans, until one of the survivors finds a dragon flying in the starry night sky. On top of that dragon is standing the village's savior. The savior thinks to himself that ever since he was a kid he sought only one power, so that nothing could be ever taken away from him, and that he could be happy. And as he thinks that, he sends several power cut dolls with markings on them flying through the air and into the goblins group. And as those dolls come in contact with the goblins, a huge explosion occurs, killing all the goblins in the area. While the survivor is too baffled to digest the situation, a goblin jumps at him. However, wasting not a second, the dragon eats the goblin. Continuing his monologue, the savior from the heavens thinks that he acquired the power he so craved by taming monsters like the Ayakashi. He became the strongest in every sense. However, on one fateful night, all of it burned to ash, and the end of history's strongest exorcist came nearer and nearer. All because his students were taken hostage and he had to oppose the imperial court. While he was the strongest to ever live, he lacked cunning, so the imperial court sent his own students after him. Just as the exorcist is dying, one of the students looks at him crying. However, he assures her that he'll do better in his next life, and makes sure not to repeat the same mistake. Several years after being reborn, the exorcist wakes up in the body of Seika Lamprauge, the third son in the Lamprauge clan, a clan known for its mages. Just as Seika's magical ability is measured through a magical ritual, to everyone's surprise, none of the magical stones shine, meaning that Seika has no magic of his own. To make things even worse for Seika is that his mother was a mistress, hence he's treated like an outcast in the family. One of his brothers, Glai, laughs and makes fun of him. However, Seika can care little because while his body may not have any magic, it has a lot of spiritual power. Now, going to his garden lawn, Seika gathers some leaves and saying some special words. He creates some shikigamis from the leaves, turning them into mice and crows. As he's doing, suddenly his brother Glai intervenes and begins hurling insults at him, calling him a loser. However, he takes things a little too far when he tries to punch Seika for simply not saying the words to please him. Meanwhile, Seika does a special signal that calls his crows to rush to his aid, and then start biting Glai. Fortunately for him, the eldest brother, Ruft, steps and shoos the crows away. However, after noticing that the crows only attacked Glai, he suspects Seika of doing something, for which Seika doesn't blame him. After that, Seika sends off his Shikigami into the sky, so that he can learn more about this new world. He comes to learn that this is a land filled with magic and humans alongside demons coexist, and the land is similar to Europe in its previous life, but it's still more technologically advanced. Since then, 7 years have passed. However, since Seika is the son of a mistress, no particular celebrations are kept for him. Now back in his room, Seika hears a knock at the door, and when he opens it up, he finds Yifa, the housemaid, standing there. She tells him that she found Seika's clan cloak in the bushes once again. Hearing that, Seika immediately understands that it's none other than his brother Glai. And speak of the devil, because Glai interferes in just that moment and asks Yifa what she's doing since she should be working around the house. And while he's at it, he tries to rub it in Seika's face that he has no magic. While Glai is busy studying magic at Imperial Lodonia Magic Academy, one of the most prestigious magic schools in the nation. Fortunately, Seika doesn't have to listen to his brother's babbling for too long, since his father and the eldest brother came along and asked gladly to join them for magic training. Shutting off for once, as Glai accompanies his father, Seika asks him if he can join. Even though the father gives a stoic response, he takes Seika to the training grounds. At first, the eldest brother, using an enchantment, does a brilliant spell consisting of water, impressing his father. Not staying very far behind, Glai also does a fire-related enchantment and shoots out a fireball. However, since he's Glai, he has to show off to his little brother. But this time, Seika decides that he wants to get a shot at doing some magic too, and with his father's permission, he holds Glai's wand. Recalling his vow, Seika reminds himself that his goal isn't to pursue power. However, he also understands that the weak are crushed by the strong, so he decides to show off some of his skills after all. Using one of the techniques he learned in his previous lives without an incantation, Seika shoots out a blue flame fireball that is way more powerful than any of his brothers, and as his family looks on at the wreckage made by the powerful spell, all of them are amazed. Of course, Glai tries to find some excuses for his brother's performance. However, his father explains that there have been cases that someone with no magic was able to produce a very powerful spell. After that, Seika tells his father that he also wants to learn magic like his brothers. However, his father denies his request since he claims to have never heard of a story where someone who was born with no magic came out to be a great mage. However, he promises to set him up with a tutor who will teach him about different things and knowledge in general. Hearing that, Seika is very pleased, and as more time passes on, Seika continues to create the paper dolls he had in his previous life. Now Seika is 11 years old, and one might think of trying to summon his old Ayakashi, since after they've captured, they are sent to another place of existence, which is much like another world, so practically they must still be fine. Keeping the risk to a minimum, Seika calls on his weakest Ayakashi, that turns out to be a fox lady. However, when the door opens, it's a child same age as Seika. Calling him Horiyushi, she jumps at him and tells him how much she missed him, since she's been in the other world now for too long. She asks Seika what he would like for her to do. However, Seika tells her that it was just a test experiment and that she'll have to go back to the plane. But it seems that she's had enough of that world, and she turns herself into a tiny fox and hides inside Seika's hair. So perhaps she can spend time with her master. The next day, Glai shouts at Yifa for mistakenly spilling water on his pants. Being the kind-hearted girl she is, she humbly accepts her mistake and apologizes for it. Being the cunning guy he is, Glai tries to take advantage of it and invites Yifa to his room in the night. Hearing in on the conversation, Seika immediately interferes and asks Glai to give her whatever lecture he needs to give her as soon as possible, because he has some business with her. Getting frustrated at Seika's words, Glai tries to punish him, however Seika blocks it pretty easily. Frustrated, Glai leaves, and Seika tells Yifa that she does not need to go to his room at nighttime. Yifa then tells Seika that she has some work with him, and takes him outside to the gardens, where she shows him a herd monster. It's none other than a baby carbuncle. She asks Seika if he can cure it or not. Trying to hide his skills, Seika asks Yifa to turn away, since he cannot work when he's nervous. And as she closes her eyes and looks the other way, Seika, using his paper dolls, takes a piece of hair from the baby monster and recites some enchantment on it, curing it immediately. As Yifa looks to see this wonder, she is very impressed and praises Seika for it. She tells him that even though people say that he's incapable of magic, he can still do spells like his brothers, so he's special. In return, Seika also tells Yifa that she is special because he has noticed that she can see certain things that ordinary people can't. At first, Yifa tries to deny it. However, Seika tells her that he's seen her eyes following the spirits of animals several times. Hearing that, she gives in and once again praises Seika for figuring it out. She tells him that her mother asked her not to tell anyone before she died. However, since the cat is already out of the bag, she tells Seika about her ability to see something called elementals. For these elementals, Seika's things have always been special, but for some reason these elements themselves never go near Seika. It's as if they're scared or something. It is because of these elementals that Yifa is always able to find Seika's stuff. Seika then asks her if she can control these elementals, and she replies that she was only able to do so once. It happened because the elementals had taken some sheets from her, and she got frustrated and yelled at them, so they stopped and ran away. Listening to this, Seika realizes that she can indeed control them. He recalls that in a previous life, he was trying to learn something similar, but couldn't find someone of that special talent to learn from. He was not expecting to meet that person in this life, and that too early on. So he decides to make Yifa his ally. So Seika offers Yifa to learn magic. At first, she tells him that she has very little magical power. However, Seika tells him that she won't have to use magic at all. Instead, it will be kind of like elemental magic. To give her a quick demonstration, he summons a Hitodama, a fireball-like creature. He then asks Yifa to command it to go. At first, she struggles with it, but finally, after a few attempts, she's able to make it leave. Seeing this, Seika is able to deduce that she definitely has the potential, but she just needs the right guidance for it. Hence their elemental training starts, and it goes on for a year till Seika reaches the age of 12. Once again on his birthday, he is seen eating a normal meal with his brothers, and his father is not even home. While he's thinking about this, he tells himself that he couldn't care less about birthdays and whatnot. Just then, Ruft and Glai show up, and the two of them offer to teach Seika some combat skills with the sword. Glai, being his usual self, teases Seika for having no magic and tells him that since he won't be able to be a mage or go to magic school, he will then have to join the army, so he needs to learn these skills. Just then, one of the servants comes running to Ruft, and they tell him that their father was facing a huge monster at the city gates. Using his fire magic, he diverted its attack and direction. However, it is now coming through the north side in a full circle, and is heading towards the clan building. Before Ruft can say something, the monster finally arrives, and due to its ginormous size, it shakes the earth. Like a scared little cat, Glai is the first to run off and hide under a table. Meanwhile, Ruft checks out the situation and realizes that it's an elder newt, one of the deadliest monsters with a humongous size and lizard-like appearance. Ruft immediately asks all the servants to evacuate the building and go into hiding. However, it seems that Yifa and another servant are already outside doing some work on the lawn, and they are right in front of the monster now. Scared for the life of his friend, Seika runs outside so that he can get to her aid. However, just before he reaches there, he witnesses Yifa using the Hitodama. She learned to hold back the monster and run away from it. Now that Yifa is safe, Seika calls the elder newt after him, and as it chases after him, he uses the poison Oni Flame, a special type of poison that is harmless to humans, but fatal to lizards. Just as the thick attack hits the elder newt, it immediately falls down and dies. While Ruft is surprised at his brother's one-shot kill, everyone sings Seika's praises. After beating the elder newt, an extravagant dinner was prepared for Seika. His father praises him for defeating a creature so dangerous that would have challenged even a skilled adventurer. His brother Luft commends his bravery, while Gray can only shake in anger. His father asks him how he knew that elder newts are weak to fire, but Seika just explains he read it in a tome. He had also heard from one of the maids before the fight that his father had driven off the elder newt from the city using fire magic. For his excellent judgment, his father wants to give Seika a reward. Seika leaps up at the chance and tells him his request. He has been practicing magic in his own way until now. However, as part of the glorious Lemprog family, he wants his skills to contribute to the empire, so he asks his father to allow him to enroll in the Rodnia Academy of Magic. The sudden request shocks everyone at the table, remembering that he did indeed see his son Seika in the past practice magic on his own, with just a few books. His father allows it, however, being an earl's son won't excuse him from the entrance exam, so Seika would need to pass that on his own merits. Seika gladly agrees with his father's condition. Seika then voices out his other request. He wishes for his father to allow the maid Efa to attend the academy, as well alongside him as his attendant. This further shocks not just his family but Efa herself, who can't help but scream loudly when she hears. Since Efa can command spirits, Seika believes that he should keep her with him. Not knowing Efa's spirit powers, his father expresses his doubts that Efa would have the magical aptitude needed to be able to attend the academy. He tells Seika to cease his second request and give up having Efa attend. However, Seika just stresses that this would be no issue. To convince his father, he decides to show him Efa's powers. Seika and Efa distance themselves from the dining table and stand near the open balcony. He then gives Efa a wand. He tells Efa that if she wants to go to the academy with him, she would need to demonstrate her control over the spirits. As such, she instructs Efa to shout Flame Note, while sending as many spirit flames as she can out the window. Efa accepts the wand and holds it close to her chest. She does want to attend the academy with Seika. As such, Seika smiles, and a bunch of spirit flames start glowing behind her. Seika resolutely points out the wand, and the end starts to burn. When she shouts Flame Note just as Seika instructed, a torrent of spirit flames suddenly gushes out of the wand. creating a tornado of fire that shoots out the window. Awed with the display of magic, Gray can't help but explain that the magic was intermediate level. After her display, Seika asks his father again if that would be enough proof, and his father finally accepts his request for Seika to study with him at the academy. Gray slams his hand on the dining table in anger and asks his father if he is serious about sending Seika to school. The Lamprogs have never put two brothers on the same path before, and Gray is already planning to go to the academy. According to him, Seika and Eva are not worth breaking their longtime traditions over. His father acknowledges his complaints and tells him that he is not intending to break the tradition. Since Seika is not going to the academy, he would instead have Gray join the Imperial Army. His father then mentions that Gray is already strong and good with swords, so that this would be a good plan. Gray, however, still doesn't agree and points out that he has mana while Seika doesn't. However, his father just retorts by asking him what he has been doing for the last few years. Has he worked hard to improve his abilities? The sudden questions frustrate and humiliate Gray. His father then tells him further that he had only ever seen Gray take his sword and play with the lowborn in town, unlike Seika, who desperately tried to improve on his own. Left with no choice, Gray points out Seika himself and challenges him to a duel, with their academy attendants in the line. Whoever will win will get to attend the academy. Moreover, if Seika loses, he would leave their house immediately. Seika just sighs at the sudden challenge. His father asks him if this would be acceptable, and Seika accepts. Meanwhile, their mother tries to tell Gray to cease his foolishness, since his brother shouldn't be dueling. But Gray just reminds her this issue is between him and Seika. There are some things he couldn't accept. With the duel decided, their father announces that the match would be held tomorrow morning. They must treat the match as real, but intermediate attack magic is forbidden. After the tense dinner, Seika goes back to his room to make a bunch of new talismans. Yuki then emerges in her fox form and changes back into a human. She asks Seika if she really intends to kill Gray in their match, but Seika tells her he can't do that. Their conversation is cut short by a sudden knock on the door. Yuki changed back to her fox form just before Seika opened the door. It was Luft. Seika lets him in his room and asks him why the sudden visit so late at night. His brother smiles at him and greets him happy birthday. His brother then hands him a wooden box and tells him it's his birthday gift. Seika thanks his brother and opens the box, finding a glass pen inside. Luft then tells him that since Seika had always studied so diligently, he expects Seika just runs right through disposable quill pens. Luft then apologizes for being so distant as a brother. Luft explains that he didn't know how to treat Seika in the past, but he's happy that he had grown into such an upstanding young man, and he's proud to have Seika as his brother. He also asks Seika if he could go easy on Gray in tomorrow's duel, so it can be a lesson for him. Gray happily accepts his brother's request. Luft then tells Seika to study hard, while Seika tells Luft to be a proper lord. Later that night, Seika is admiring the glass pen his brother made him. Yuki then appears and compliments Luft for his ability to judge people, but expresses her doubt that the pen is valuable. Seika tells her that it's not important and that the pen was a very thoughtful gift. Seika then notices something out the window and instructs Yuki to go back into hiding. Out of nowhere, a strong gust of wind blows his window open. Seika looks out the window and sees Gray out in the courtyard below challenging him to a duel. Seika goes out to his brother and asks him why he didn't wait for tomorrow's duel. Unfortunately, his brother just tells him to shut up and interrogates him when he plotted the whole thing. Seika, however, replies that he had always wanted to go to the Magic Academy. Gray tells Seika he just got lucky that a monster showed up, and Seika ended up beating it. Gray doesn't want to follow the formal duel rules their father set, but instead challenges Seika to an all-out duel. The duel can only end when one of them gives up or passes out. The loser would tell their father that they concede the next day. Seika reminds him that intermediate is dangerous, but Gray disregards his warnings and starts to attack. Gray casts a magic circle directly underneath Seika's feet, which explodes and wraps him in a tornado of fire. However, the flames vanish and Seika is still standing unscathed. Gray attacks Seika again with a windlace, but Seika easily blocks it with a barrier. His brother is shocked that he can use light element magic. Gray then tries to attack Seika's barrier with a barrage of magic, while Seika casually pulls out a talisman from his pocket. He holds out the talisman and orders Gray to stop moving. Gray immediately stops moving and drops his wand. Seika then takes hold of the talisman's arm and crumples it, causing Gray to shout, as his arm also gets damaged. With Gray already incapacitated, Seika asks him if he gives up, and he does. Seika straightens the talisman's arm again, and Gray collapses unconscious. Yuki asks Seika if it's okay he showed a little bit of his powers to Gray, but Seika tells her he did it because he made a promise to Luft. Seika remembers his brother's words about him getting lucky that the monster showed up. However, this wasn't true because he indeed planned everything for the past 6 months. A few days ago, he had summoned one of the subordinates, a cyclops named Nayudo, and ordered him to drive the Elder Newt out of the mountain. He didn't expect that the Elder Newt would go to the town, but since there were new casualties, his plan still worked flawlessly. Yuki asks him why he's doing these things when he was already strong enough to do as he pleases against the powerless humans. However, Seika reminds her that he died from the powerless humans' schemes, so now he would be one of them instead and live peacefully. The next day, Seika and Aefa are ready to go to the Magic Academy, and Luft was there to see them go. At the carriage, he gives Seika a necklace of mana stones that would help her in reliably summoning spirits. If her power grows, it will be useful for Seika as well. A little while later, Seika is already unwell from the carriage's shaking. Aefa points out the window and Rodnia, the academic city, can be seen in the distance. Back at home, Seika's father is thinking about the first time Seika had come there. It was 12 years ago when a strange girl had left a baby in his arms. The baby was Seika and his brother Gilbert's son. Gilbert became an adventurer after graduating from the academy and went on many adventures. However, they lost contact when he entered the Infernal Lands. The baby he left, Seika, had black hair and eyes, which are rare, and can already use magic when he was 1 year old. His strange behavior caused Luft to distance himself from Seika and Gray to be hostile to him. Seika's father starts to think if Seika is Gilbert and a devil's son. But Seika had no mana. He recognized that the fire spell Seika used yesterday was different, and the Elder Newt seemed to be poisoned. As such, sending Seika to the army would be risky, so he sent him to the academy instead. Meanwhile, Seika and Aefa finally reach Rodnia. Since Seika is technically her master now, Aefa asks him if maybe she should stay in the room that night. But Seika misinterpreted this as having dinner together. Seika tells her he lost his appetite, which makes Aefa angry and she leaves. Yuki then appears and scolds Seika for not understanding a girl's heart. The next day, they head to the academy to go take the entrance exam. There, they introduce themselves to the exam instructor. The other examinees hear Seika's last name and immediately want to be friends with him. They are also surprised to see Seika bring a slave with him. As for the test, the first part was a simple magic tool to measure mana. It would glow depending on your magic affinity. This world's magic system is based on 4 elements: fire, water, wind, and earth. There are also light and dark as well, but it's rarely included. Seika first takes the test and the tool glows with orange and green light, signifying her affinity to wind and fire. Meanwhile, the tool didn't glow at all when Seika touched it. The instructor was confused, but Seika tells her that he doesn't have mana in the first place. Thankfully, the instructor clarifies that the test is just for registration purposes. Meanwhile, the examinees who previously wanted to be friends with him now start questioning why he was there in the first place. Before the rumors intensify, a red-haired girl suddenly speaks up, ready to take the test. Upon touching the bowl, it immediately glows white brightly, signifying she has a strong affinity to all 4 elements. She introduces herself as Amu, a commoner. Seika thanks her for distracting the other examinees, but Amu just replies that she didn't do it for him. She then tells him that someone who can't use magic shouldn't be studying there, and Seika probably just entered thanks to his family's name. As the girl walks away, Seika can't help but wonder why the girl looks so much like someone from his past life.
At Rodnia Academy of Magic, aspiring students are currently taking their written entrance exams. After the exam, Effa and Seika discuss the test outside the classroom. Effa admits to Seika that she thinks she missed a lot of questions. Seika advises Effa that she can make up for it in the practical exams, since Effa didn't really have time to prepare for the written part. While they are talking, Seika glimpses Amu pass by the hallway with a sword on her hip. He remembers how Amu amazes everyone at the registration booth about being a 4 elemental. Seika smiles and wonders if Amu is also good at using her sword. For the practical exam, the aspiring students head outside where stone blocks are prepared for them. The stone blocks act as their targets so the teachers can observe their magical affinities. There are different stone blocks for fire, earth, water, wind, light, and dark, and the students can try as many as they can. After the teacher's explanation, the applicants one by one demonstrate their skills. Some use fire magic, others fire stone magic, and some applicants demonstrate water magic. Seika observes that the other applicants only demonstrate one element, and most of them show mediocre results. When it's Effa's turn, Seika wishes her good luck as she nervously steps toward the stones. Effa stands in front of the stone block for fire, and fire spirits gather around her. She uses the spell Flame Note, which summons a tornado of fire hurtling toward the stone. The other applicants and the instructor are surprised by her prowess. She was able to use intermediate magic, and she didn't even chant to use it. The instructor looks worriedly at the fire-resistant stone block, which is now smoldering from Effa's magic. Effa asks permission to go to the next target, and shyly stands in front of the stone block for wind magic. Now, even Seika is surprised that Effa didn't stop at just one element. Effa points her wand at the stone and sends green lances of wind toward the stone. The lances puncture the stone, leaving gaping holes behind, and a particularly strong lance destroys the whole stone altogether. The slack-jawed applicants watch, shocked that she once again uses intermediate magic without any incantations. One kid worries that the target is now gone, but the instructor reassures them that there are spare targets. She announces that she's done and goes back to the group. She shyly asks Seika how she did, and Seika happily tells her that she was amazing. She didn't just use fire, but she was also able to use wind now. Effa admits to him that she practiced on her own in hopes of surprising Seika. After Effa, it's now Seika's turn to take the practical exams. When he stands before the stone blocks, the other applicants start to gossip about why he's even trying, when he doesn't even have mana in the first place. As such, they are surprised when Seika summons a blue fireball that promptly shoots and explodes at the target. The instructor once again worries for the targets, since the blue flame still isn't going out. Meanwhile, Seika moves to the stone block for the earth magic. He recognizes that the stone is probably granite, so he uses his understanding of science to cast his magic, transforming it into yellow crystal-like columns that obliterate the stone block. The instructor asks him what magic he used, but Seika just apologizes and heads to the next stone block for water magic. He can't tell them that the yellow columns are pyrite crystals. Putting metal and earth energy into a granite target would cause them to crystallize and break the stone. At the next stone block, Seika uses a talisman to summon a torrent of water crashing toward the target, which immediately turns into ice, freezing the whole block. He then walks back to the surprised applicants and tells the instructor he's done now. Effa asks him why he won't do the other elements, but he just answers that he can't do the others yet. Wind wasn't in his 5 elements, and he doesn't yet know how light and dark magic works. Later that afternoon, the instructor stares in wonder at the conditions of the stone blocks after the practical exam. Another instructor arrives and asks him how the practical exams went, and he replies that it was a real pain, with so many things that went wrong. The other instructor reveals to him the mana levels of the applicants. Effa should barely be able to use magic, while Seika had no mana to speak of. The instructor finds it hard to believe, but he isn't surprised anymore, since another applicant was even more impressive than either of them. Amu was able to destroy all 5 of the elemental stone blocks, the first examinee in Academy history to achieve such a feat. The 2 teachers wonder if Amu might be the hero from the legends, the one born among the humans when the Devil King revives. The next day, the names of the applicants who passed the entrance exam are posted, and Seika and Effa go to take a look. On the list, Seika finds his name ranked 3rd among the applicants. He was surprised since he thought he had aced the written test. He then checks the 2nd and 1st place. To their surprise, Effa placed 2nd. Seika can't believe he lost to Effa in the practicals. Meanwhile, the 1st place was held by Amu, which didn't surprise Seika. Seika smiles, since he already found the one he's going to use in his plans. A day after the results were announced, acceptance letters arrived at Seika and Effa's inn. Therefore, the two are now allowed to enroll in the academy. The two enter the academy on the day of the entrance ceremony wearing their new uniforms. Effa shyly asks Seika if her skirt is too short, and Seika blushingly reassures her it isn't. Since they would now be living in the dormitories, Seika wonders if they would let her enter the men's dorm, but Seika doubts it. This worries Effa, since she couldn't be an attendant. However, Seika explains to her that from today onward, they are both simply students at the academy. Seika then notices something in the nearby forest and asks Effa if she can sense any spirits. Effa informs him she sees little dark spirits, and there are a lot of them. The two enter the forest, and Seika finds the probable cause of the dark spirits. A large magic circle is drawn on the forest grounds. Effa observes that the magic circle somehow feels wrong, and Seika agrees. She asks what they should do, but Seika points out it's probably the Academy's magic circle, so they shouldn't mess with it. He then invites Effa to continue on to the auditorium. Meanwhile, Seika sneakily releases a few of his talismans, which promptly fly away and surround the magic circle. Later that night, a buffet party is being held for the new students of the Academy. There are numerous foods laid out for the students, and Seika immediately starts eating. He also advises Effa to start eating herself. They then see Amu enter the stage in front to give the commencement speech. Amu confidently introduces herself to everyone and exclaims that her goal in entering the academy is to get stronger. At that same moment, Seika senses through his talismans that the magic circle they found outside has activated. He can feel them getting nearer, and true enough, the door suddenly explodes. When the dust settles, a group of lesser devils appears to have breached the building. The students immediately run away in fear while the instructors shoot at the devils with various magic spells. Seika notices that the lesser devils are looking for something, and the spells of the instructors aren't really damaging them. One devil is about to kill an instructor, and Seika readies a talisman to save her. Before he can save her, a sword suddenly slices the devil's hand, causing it to roar in pain. Amu had managed to wound the devil. The lesser devil attacks Amu with his mace, but Amu dodges and counterattacks with a barrage of wind lances. She then yells at the other students to get out of the way if they can't help. Meanwhile, Seika notices something is off about the monsters. Their attacks are so slow that Seika wonders if they are a diversion or a scouting party. Using the other talismans he released earlier, he surveys the different parts of the school. By the magic circle, he finally sees the caster. Seika then warns Effa to use magic to escape if she's ever in danger. A rumble shakes the school, and when Effa opens her eyes, Seika is gone. Outside the school, Seika slowly approaches the large demon near the magic circle while reciting a poem. The poem is about meeting an inhuman being in the middle of the night, which perfectly captures Seika's mood. The large demon asks him what a human child is doing outside and says he is a fool for challenging him alone. However, Seika tells him that he just wants to play. The large demon summons 3 lesser demons and orders them to attack Seika. Using his talismans, Seika banishes 2 of the lesser demons and captures the other one, teleporting it to another dimension for safekeeping. The large demon is surprised that Seika knows teleportation magic, and he recognizes Seika as a worthy opponent. He decides to fight Seika himself and summons multiple magic circles with swords emerging from them. The large demon introduces himself as Galgalius, a metal devil capable of commanding the flame and earth. Seika throws his talismans at him, but Gal easily burns them away. Seika is surprised that Gal can even see his talismans, which should have been invisible. He throws a couple of fireballs at Gal, but Gal blocks them all with his metal swords. Gal then attacks with his sword, but Seika easily dodges the slow projectile. Then, out of nowhere, Gal teleports the sword, forcing Seika to dodge, but his cheek still gets wounded. Gal then throws some lava at Seika, who has to jump to avoid it. Gal immediately teleports behind Seika and slices at him, cutting off his arm. Seika leisurely asks Gal what he's looking for, and Gal reveals that he's looking for the hero. Gal also divulges that he had received an oracle 12 years ago, proclaiming the revival of the demon lord and the return of the hero. Moreover, he found the hero using his lesser devils, the red-haired girl who wields extraordinary power. Seika realizes Gal was talking about Amu. Meanwhile, Gal once again sends his swords at Seika, and when he jumps to dodge them, he slices at him, beheading Seika. Gal thanks him for the entertaining fight and walks away. Before he can go far, however, Seika appears again, singing another poem. Gal asks him how he's still alive and throws a sword at him, impaling his head. However, the sword vanishes and Seika reveals to him that he uses revival spells and can eliminate any foreign objects. Gal tries attacking Seika again, but Seika uses a water spell, flooding the whole forest. The wet Gal teleports above Seika and attacks, but Seika summons a Thunder Beast, electrocuting Gal. However, Gal teleports behind Seika and impales him with his fist. Seika just smiles and touches his arm, making it explode, and Seika teleports away. He starts lecturing Gal about the atomic properties of metal, but Gal exclaims he can still fight since Seika is probably running low on talismans. Seika just smiles and summons all his talismans, flying throughout the battlefield. He then declares that he'll summon a minion to finally get rid of Gal. Seika summons Mizuchi, a Chinese dragon, and Gal can only shriek in fear that even the Devil King has no dragons that large. Seika explains that it's not a dragon, but a worm, and sends Mizuchi to attack Gal. Mizuchi easily captures Gal in his jaws and in one bite kills him. Afterward, the flying dragon immediately tries to run away, forcing Seika to use his talismans to guide it back into another dimension. After the battle, Yuki arrives and hugs Seika, who confesses that she hid since she felt like she couldn't help during the battle. Yuki asks him if it was a good idea to use his body double dolls during the fight, but Seika admits he expected to die 3 or 4 times before defeating Gal. Seika heads back to the party and finds the students resting from their wounds. Effa reports to him that all the lesser devils were slain by Amu all on her own, earning both the admiration and fear of her classmates. Seika thinks to himself that in his past life, being the strongest just ended with him dying. Therefore, in this life, he would instead train someone else to be the strongest in his place. That way, he can just relax and enjoy his life, and he decides that Amu will be the one who will be the strongest. If she dies, he'll surely mourn her, but Seika will make sure she'll become the strongest.
Arriving at school the next day, Seika realizes that the devil panic had calmed down after he had been enrolled for a month. Just then, his thoughts are interrupted by Effa, who excitedly runs up to him after seeing him from afar. While the two walk together, Seika sees the fierce Amu. Seeing her makes him remember his plans for living life. Apparently, his plan involved befriending someone as strong as Amu and enjoying the shade of her umbrella. This he feels is a wonderful and perfect low-key plan, since it will prevent him from meeting the same end he had met with the last time. Immediately, he calls out to Amu, but she clearly warns him not to talk to her like they are friends. Having been snubbed by Amu, Seika tries to maintain his cool. He, however, is determined to take his time to make her his friend, although he still wonders how it is he can do that. Shortly after, Seika and Effa are walking together, when he sees a large bowl of green liquid falling directly above their heads. This prompts him to make the use of Paper Doll's magic in order to teleport them out of danger. This makes Effa shocked as she wonders what just happened. Going close to the substance, Seika is left wondering what it is. In order to figure it out, he plans to take some of it back with him. At that moment, his teacher, Professor Cordell, calls out to them, asking if they are okay. Apparently, he had been the one who spilled the large bowl of green liquid. After taking care of the bowl, he seeks to know if they are hurt and apologizes to them for the incident. While Seika abruptly states that he is fine, he seeks to know what the substance is. In reply, Professor Cordell states that it is a mixture of his research, which he made from stewing monster blood, minerals, and medicinal herbs. Hearing the components of the substance, Seika is justified of the stink. However, he seeks to know if the professor was also responsible for the floating of the large jar. To this, the professor confirms their claim, stating that he had tried to move the large jar up a floor, but was unable to do so since he is a light element specialist who isn't good at using dark elements. Hearing him say this, Seika recalls that the dark element controls gravity, time, and space, while the light element controls lightning and light itself. The thought of this makes him realize that people who can use those are rare. Just then, the professor takes his leave. While Seika continues to look at him suspiciously, he is reminded by Effa that they need to hurry to Professor Keiran's class. When the class ends, Professor Keiran informs the students about the founding anniversary rite. To help with the rite, she seeks the assistance of the top 2 students in the class, who happen to be Amu and Effa. While Effa is shocked at this, Amu seeks to know what they have to do. In reply, the professor stated that they would have to take the new student roster to the temple in Rodnia Forest in order to have it blessed. Hearing her mention the forest makes Seika remember that it was where he had met Gallius. Just then, he raises his hands and asks the professor what would happen if one of the two students who were meant to help suddenly declined. In that case, the professor states that the third-place student would have to help. Fortunately, the third-place student, Seika. Due to this, he plainly asks Effa to decline, and she does so. As much as the professor doesn't approve of his behavior, she is forced to accept their decisions. More so, Seika feels it's a traditional right that shouldn't be left to a slave. While heading home, Seika apologizes to Effa for what he had done earlier. Furthermore, he asks her if she had wanted to participate in the rite, but she clearly says no, since she believes he had done that for a reason. Meanwhile, Effa seeks to know if his reason for wanting to participate in the rites is because of Amu. To this, he admits, stating that he does so because some people resent her for what she had done during the Devil Panic. Through this, he intends to make them stop. Feeling a sense of jealousy, Effa seeks to know if she is his type of girl, since she is pretty, slim, and has nice hair. However, Seika denies her claim, stating that he just wants to be friends with her. Still curious, Effa asks why it has to be her, and he reminds her of how Amu beat the devils, emphasizing on how skilled she is to have done that. Due to this, he intends to be her friend. Hearing him state these qualities of Amu, Effa continues to feel a sense of jealousy and openly states that she can get stronger too. To prove it, she informs him about her recent activity of gathering spirits who are starting to follow her command. As much as Seika commends Effa's ability, he still thinks Amu will end up being a significant figure with regards to strength. With no other choice, Effa decides to help him, and this causes Seika to be thankful. However, she tells him not to act like he had acted in class, since it would make people start to speak badly of him. Seeing how much she cares about him, he assures her that he wouldn't. On the day of the rite, Professor Keirin hands them the register to be delivered. While the two advance deep into the forest, Amu seeks to know what Seika intends to pull. In response, he admits that she stands out so much, and he needed a chance to talk with her. Just then, she seeks to know if his slave Effa isn't enough for him, since she was big-chested, accusing him for wanting to score with another classmate too. This Seika finds funny, as he informs her that it is a big misunderstanding, since he isn't in a relationship with Effa, even though she believes his claim. She has a feeling that he is fooling around with Effa. However, as much as Seika denies her claim, she continues to believe otherwise. This makes Seika realize that she loves dirty talk. Just as she is about to scold him for thinking that way, she is stopped by her painful headache. At that moment, the two see a cut 3 with a magical circle, which transports them to a dungeon. In the dungeon, the two are attacked by some monsters, which Amu wastes no time in slicing down. However, just as she cuts down the last one, she's attacked from behind by a large-looking monster. Fortunately, just before she is hit, Seika uses his magic to summon a stake driver, which smashes the monster's head. This kind of spell is new to Amu, who admits to having not heard about it. But Seika states that it is one of the perks of his family, the Lamprogue family, which allows him to study spells that most people do not. With how dark the place is and how the monsters appear, Amu realizes that they are in a dungeon, and the two try to figure a way out. While Seika thinks they should stay put and wait for help, Amu believes help won't come if they wait, since dungeons have a low survival rate, especially since they do not even know where they have been teleported to. Finding them, she thinks, is a job that even search and rescue specialist adventurers will not take. With no hope but to help themselves, Seika lights up the path with his paper dolls. Seeing this, Amu is surprised that he can also do light magic. This, she feels, would improve their chances of survival. Seeing how relaxed she is, Seika thinks Amu is having fun, given the circumstances they find themselves in, but she denies his claim. While they advance deep into the dungeon, Seika sets up some paper dolls on the ceiling to help his paper dolls on the surface, to help them find an exit. Shortly after, the two are attacked by some strong-looking monsters. Seeing them, Amu wastes no time in charging at them, cutting them down. However, she is hit by one of them and forced to pass out. In order to protect his partner, Seika summons the wood element once again, allowing it to smash the monsters one after another. Unfortunately for him, the monsters keep coming in large numbers. As a last resort, Seika summons the giant centipede, which kills all the monsters easily. When Amu regains consciousness, she is surprised since her wounds are healed. However, the headache remains, and this makes Seika worried. Since he had transferred all of her wounds into a paper doll, he realizes that her headaches aren't ordinary. This makes him set up a magical barrier to prevent curses from coming through. Surprisingly, this stops the headache, making her realize that her headaches are actually a curse. Just then, Seika sought to know when it started, and it had started when she first enrolled. She, however, doesn't think it's a curse, since she bears no curse marks. In order to verify it, she permits Seika to take a look at her body, but he doesn't see anything, although he believes the fact that the barrier stops it means it is a curse. Due to this, Amu wonders if she will have to continuously stay in the barrier. To proffer a solution, Seika asks for a strand of hair, which he uses with a paper doll, to create a substitute barrier for her. Even though he says it will get used up, he assures her of making more of it when she needs it. While spending time in the barrier, Amu seeks to know what elements Seika uses, but he doesn't seem to have an answer to the question. Just then, she brings back her talk about Effa, asking if he seriously is not interested in her. Furthermore, she asks if he has kissed her or felt her chest, but Seika clearly states that he hasn't. His response sounded lame to Amu, who had expected more. At that moment, she informs Seika that Effa is in love with him, but he thinks it's a misunderstanding. Since they are like family, she, however, doesn't believe that it's possible for a noble and a slave to be family. To clarify, he informs her that he was an illegitimate son who had been treated like an outsider, with Effa being the only person who treated him right. This makes Amu understand just how much trouble Seika has had his fair share of. After that, he turns the table, seeking to know about Amu's parents and if they were adventurers. In response, she states that her mother is a guild officer and her father an adventurer. However, she doesn't feel happy about saying it. When Seika notices this, he opts to change topics. Asking her what she likes to do, she clearly states that her interests are fighting monsters and people. Furthermore, she hates that her reason for coming to the academy is to get away from the guild who thought she was weird. She will keep fighting in hopes that fighting will get boring for her and give her the chance to be normal. So far, she doesn't think it's working since she feels so much fun from killing those monsters. All these make her feel like she is weird, but Seika doesn't think she is. Instead, he thinks she's just hasn't found her environment to thrive in. Hearing these words from Seika makes her thankful. After that, the two head out to face the monsters in the dungeon, since they assume that no monster is a match for them. Having defeated the monsters, they get ready to face the head of the monsters, which is the dungeon boss. Together, and combining their unique abilities, the two successfully take down the large monster. This gets Amu so excited. Unknown to her, he had already found an exit, but chose to let them fight the dungeon boss in order to give her an incredible experience. Shortly after, the two see a mithril sword on the body of the monster, and Seika offers it to Amu. While he takes the ring with it, when the two leave the dungeon, they give their professors a detailed account of their experience. On the other hand, Seika figures out that Professor Cordell had been responsible for all the irregularities in the academy. Apparently, he had been the one who placed the curse on Amu, and was devastated to learn that the curse didn't affect her anymore. Just then, he summons a devil and transfers the curse on himself. Then, he transfers the curses and regrets back to whence they came, making the professor the recipient of all of them. Serenity is finally restored to the academy as a group of students are engaged in a conversation. It's been a whole full year since any trouble loomed at school. The students giggle and engage in different conversations as they are in groups. They also make their different remarks about the food that is being served. Amu on her path is extremely grateful to her friends, as she admits that she could not have made it far without them. However, one of them states that she had made it with her own hard work, and that they only serve as a push. There haven't been any devil attacks for a long time. Seika has his eyes all over the academy, but he's unable to detect any unusual activity. There is a maximum peace, unlike some situations they've experienced in the past. Seika is less worried but vigilant as he enjoys the company of his friends. The vice principal of the academy interrupts their conversations as he states that Seika, Lamprauge, and Effa are to report to the principal's office the next day. However, he did not state what they were needed for, as he excused himself from the gathering almost immediately. Seika, on the other hand, is a little bit perplexed as their summation to the principal's office feels unusual. What could she possibly need from them? Are they offenders? Did they breach any school rules? This bothered them as they resorted to visiting the office the next day. They are prepared to take anything that comes their way. On the next day, as they find their way to the principal's office, Aoife states that she has never met the principal before. This case is also the same for Seika, who admits the vice principal seemed to have organized all the ceremonies by himself after all. Seika agrees, as he states that he had thought that some Imperials just ran the school in name only. They eventually get to the principal's office as Seika practices a curtsy by knocking after which they are ushered into the office. Immediately, the principal sees Seika. She commends him for his ability to think in order rather than being more of a talented being. She had thought he was just like all the other talented students. She was quite delighted to find out about his different logistic skills. Seika is happy to note this as he also expresses satisfaction with the fact that his school is being headed by a demi-human. However, the principal quickly kicks against this, stating that he is not a demi-human, and that she'd rather be called a demi-devil. Aoife agrees to this as she states that the myth that the dwarves are descended from devils. The principal remarks that Seika is just like some people. Seika sought to know who she was talking about. It was probably his father, he had thought. However, the principal affirms knowing his uncle. Seika was glad that the principal knew his uncle, and just as he was made to continue the conversation, the principal shoves this aside almost immediately. She diverts from the conversation immediately as she proceeds to tell the reason why they are summoned. She wants him to enter into the capital's Arts of War tournament. He is to gain entrance with another girl whose name is Maybelle. She breaks into the office unannounced as she introduces herself as Maybelle Crane. The principal states that either Seika or Aoife will go alongside Maybelle. She further states that the academy has been given just 2 entries, as one is originally from Maybelle, and the other entry has to be earned by one of the former. Seika is only surprised that he is even considered for the tournament in the first place. Eventually, he ends up getting chosen at the final stage to be an accomplice of Maybelle to the tournament. After excusing themselves from the principal's office, Seika engages in a discussion with herself where Amyu emphasizes her disgust for the academy for not considering her. She states that the principal only wants them to participate to boost the company's reputation. However, Aoife states that there is a price of money and a chance to join the Royal Guards. Amyu expresses her hatred for the Royal Guards, as she only identifies for the money reward, which cracks everyone up. Seika tries to brighten her mood by stating that she is not considered because she is recognized as probably too powerful, as the Academy did not want to send out strong people. It could mean losing them to the Royal Guards. She then inquires why Seika is chosen as she is not yet convinced. Seika states that he is probably chosen because they are aware that he is not too strong. Amyu hardly buys the idea as she's not easily convinced. She also has so many things to say at a go. They all decide to take a walk through the school as Amyu continues to express her hatred and jealousy of Maybelle. She establishes the point that she is quite certain of the fact that the Academy is trying to favor Maybelle so that she has a tournament appearance on her resume. This is to make it easier for her to get a high-ranking job in the government. Her friends are surprised as they inquire to know if she is sure of everything she is spilling. Amyu confirms that she is very certain, as she states that she will probably forfeit easily in the tournament. Just as Amyu bets that she has never experienced any real hardship, Maybelle bumps into their discussion unannounced again as she strikes out that it is Amyu who has never had the experience of a real hardship. Amyu is shocked by the attack. Maybelle states that she is not considered by the Academy because she is simply weak, and that her friends are only deceiving her to make her feel better. This exasperates Amyu, who challenges Maybelle to a sword fight. Maybelle is at the verge of rejecting, however Amyu insists. Seika, on his part, refuses to stop them as he insists on seeing Maybelle's strength. The mini-sword begins just after Amyu tosses a sword at Maybelle. Amyu charges forcefully as Maybelle blocks the attack. To the surprise of everyone, this repeats itself as Maybelle eventually defeats her with black magic. Amyu is more aggressive and infuriated after the defeat. Maybelle tells Seika to opt out if he does not take the tournament seriously. However, he has a different approach to her hostility, as he merely agrees to whatever she says. She excuses herself from the gathering silently. Everyone watches in disbelief except Amyu, who watches in disgust. She plans to follow them to the tournament the next day and also resolves to work really hard in order to avoid further disrespect from Maybell. The next day, Seika is in a carriage with Maybell heading for the capital. However, he is not alone with her, as Amyu and Yifa had insisted on following him, as they claim to be his servants. He asks them if they had sought permission from the school. They are unbothered, as they only bent on witnessing the tournament at all cost. Amyu is set to find out how powerful Maybell could be. However, Maybell referred to every one of them in the carriage as children without a care in the world, including the rest of them at the academy. Seika, who tries to avoid her personal issues, merely agrees with her. They eventually arrive at the destination, after which Maybell had left them without saying a single word about her whereabouts. Seika asks every one of them to ignore this act as they admire the aesthetics of the building. They have to walk their way through the combat grounds as the carriage cannot travel further. Seika is grateful for this, as he is not used to traveling a long distance in a carriage. He feels really sick and tired. They walk towards a wall that has the details of the fight record scores, as Seika states that he would like to retire to the inn. Yifa is worried as she wants to look after him. Amyu assures that he will definitely be fine, as men like to be alone sometimes. Yifa eventually succumbs as they both excuse him. She promises to get him something on her return. They are not aware of Seika's real plan, as if he's not planning to head directly to the inn. After the two girls leave, he decides to secretly look into why the academy chose him and not Amyu. After a few minutes, it was time for the tournament to begin, as people were seated around the combat area in an open arena. However, before the commencement of the prestigious capital sword fighting tournament begins, the rules are stated as they have been changed. This year allows the use of mages, and approximately half of the entrants are mages. A competitor loses if incapacitated, knocked out of the ring, or they surrender. The basis for the judge's decision is unchanged, as another addition is made. The destruction of one's amulet is regarded as an eviction, as they break when too much is absorbed. Hence, if an amulet of an entrant breaks, he or she will be directly eliminated from the tournament. Seika is introduced as the first mage, as his opponent is recognized as Mad Dog, a speedster from the Gark mercenary band, whose name is Dennis Reagan. He is noted as a pure swordsman and the best the Garl's mercenary band has. Dennis approaches his opponent, who is Seika, with pride and arrogance. As he seems rather sure of his victory, he belittles Seika and claims to have many edges over him. Dennis brags about his ability to eliminate Seika with a twinkle of an eye with his sword, before he works any magic at all. However, Seika states that he is exhausted as he feels sick. Dennis mistakes this for him announcing the reason for his upcoming defeat. However, Seika quickly corrects him, saying that he only is saying that he's weak, or would like to wrap things up quickly. This annoys Dennis, as it messes with his ego. However, before he can charge at Seika, there is a change in the atmosphere, as he uses his magic on Dennis. He appears to be behind him as he makes him surrender with an attack. Seika is announced as the winner. However, while everyone celebrates him, a little rabbit warns about his success and the area. The rabbit advises him to be careful about attracting attention, and it also inquires about how many battles Seika intends to win. Seika only affirms that he is unsure, as he will find out in the long run. He goes to join his friends who are seated in the audience. They welcome him as they cheer and commend him for doing well. However, they had barely settled when the second battle was announced. The two entrants are announced as Bellum, the finest student of Sage Ford, as Sage Ford is regarded as being famous for its past success as a water mage. The opponent of Bellum is Kyle, who is only recognized as a guard from the Rugrock Merchants Association. However, before the battle begins, Kyle only looks at Bellum with his one eye, as the other eye is regarded as an evil eye. This evil eye is regarded as very harmful and almost devilish if an individual is not careful. Bellum was not careful enough to look away or detect this quickly, and also he became enveloped in fear rather too early. Just as the motion for the fight is moved, before Bellum can take any step, Kyle freezes him as Seika deduces through his thoughts that Kyle has done this because he is able to access the fear in Bellum's eyes and his countenance. He walks slowly towards him with his sword as he slashes through his throat. Bellum falls to his death as everyone exclaims in disbelief. Such a thing has never happened in the history of the tournament. How did Kyle do this? Seika, however, studies that he is a veteran killer, and after seeing the excitement on the people's faces, he is bothered as to why they are happy over the death of a human like them in the tournament. He is surprised to find out that even in their world, people take delight in watching others die. He notices that Kyle's expression did not change even after the fight. Information has it that he was a Rugrock Merchant Association guard. However, that's almost certainly a lie, as he does not look like it. He is probably someone with a dark history, sent from wherever nobody knows. His opponent could not even move an inch during the attack. He is one of the casters who put spiritual powers into the gaze of his opponents and curse whoever they look at with their evil eye. After Seika's assessment, he withdraws as Kyle goes to sit with the audience. Maybell, however, wonders with slight fear and disbelief from a distance. Did you enjoy this recap? If you did, kindly like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can bring you the recap of the next episode. Until next time, do take care and stay safe.